Hi everyone, welcome back to What's This Weapon? This one, I'm sure some of you will recognise at least the back part, the gun part, aft of here. It's a Carl Gustav M45. Well, the kind of it refers to the prototype introduction date of 1945. It comes into service in the years that follow. This choice is actually inspired by another video that I did recently for Forces News. They were interested in the Carl Gustav, the M45, showing up in Ukraine. And so I did a sort of potted history of the normal gun for them. And I briefly, because we only had this version of the M45B, which just briefly involves primarily this reinforced end cap here with this great big hook on it. They were clearly having issues with this popping off in service, and so the main change from the A to the B, or the first model to the B, is this cap here. So I showed it on camera for that reason, also because it's a bit exciting in the front here with this suppressor. And at the time, I thought this was a straightforward case, although it's a very niche thing, but straightforward case of this being what some of you will know about, which is the CIA's suppressed Carl Gustav, Swedish K, which is the American name for the Carl Gustav, from Vietnam. Only when I did a bit of follow-up did I realise that in the few photos that exist, and a drawing which will show you of the human engineering laboratory of the US Army, who designed the suppressor for that gun, that this isn't that gun. This is different. Very visibly different. So have a look at the drawing. Have a look at the photos that you can find online. The Vietnam pattern, as I'll now call it, had a 2-diameter tube on the suppressor. Well, you can see right away this one is a single diameter. It's straight-sided all the way to the muzzle. It has this defined cluster of cooling holes up the front. The suppressor internals are still 2-diameter, so they're more similar than they might appear at first glance, with a larger chamber, a larger rear portion for the barrel to insert into. We'll take this apart in a moment and you'll see that. So the HEL, or HEL, I guess, unfortunate acronym perhaps for a military organisation, but that version is internally more similar than this, and this has wire mesh instead of conventional baffles as well, as does that. And I think this portion of that drawing, that design, is a wrap of mesh, a sheet of mesh. It still does the same job. It helps slow down and cool the gases to reduce the pressure, so you get less of a pop when the bullet comes out. They're also both ported. In the HEL design, it's a cluster of ports drilled all over the barrel, much like other integrally suppressed designs. In this one, well, it's different, and we'll show you when I take it apart. The Vietnam pattern has the original sights ground off the normal barrel. In fact, while I'm talking about the normal gun, here's the original pattern of M45 with its original Suomi coffin magazine. Had an interchangeable magazine well to allow that to be fitted. Anyway, doesn't have the reinforced end cap, but we don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole. But the Vietnam CIA Swedish K had the front sight removed, unless it was replicated, but I suspect it was just removed, and then tack welded onto their design of suppressor. So for those of you who don't know, very, very brief stats are about 600 rounds per minute, pretty typical Sten type rate of fire. In fact, you can regard this as a sort of Gucci Sten gun, really, in many ways, arguably with a better magazine feed, and a weight of 8.6 pounds. So pretty hefty, but these blowback submachine guns often are. It has that iconic but extremely uncomfortable, very thick grip. Well, it's not thick in this dimension, but it's very front to back, very, very thick. Never understood why that's the case. There's no design reason for it that I can discern. But anyway, enough of that, but we will compare the barrel setup when we take this one apart. But that's the normal setup with just an ordinary barrel of the length that you can see, and then that gets drilled with holes and covered by the suppressor. So in the Vietnam version, the barrel is intact but drilled with holes. This is different, as you'll see in just a second. A quick word on the users of this. The other version that we're not necessarily talking about here, that you'll read about and see, created for the CIA, or the suppressors manufactured for them, supplied by them also. Their operators would use it in Vietnam, or carry it in Vietnam. They also supplied them to MACV-SOG, who are an absolutely fascinating US Army unit who did some absolutely astonishing high-risk stuff, including deniable missions over the border into other countries. And they needed non-US weapons. So they used some AKs, they used a lot of the Swedish K because they were made available, and at least some of those were suppressed. The Navy SEALs also made use of the Swedish K, and it became a sort of low-key but still iconic US military firearm, sort of by default. So let's get inside this, and we'll also try and show you a view down the bore as well. And actually, as I go, let's note here, there's some slightly rough grind marks on the magazine here, down the bottom. Bit surprising. And it's still surprising when you know what else is ground off on this, which is the serial number, inspection marks, including, if you see some close-ups of this, you'll notice little dished out grind marks. That's wherever there was a little inspection mark or even a proof mark, I believe, and they've just ground them off. There's one on the bolt even, just in case I forget to show you later. So yeah, look, this has been sanitized, which is interesting. Now, I'm not sure if that was actually done to the examples used in Vietnam. The fact that they were Swedish would seem to be enough, but it's quite likely, I think, that they did also grind off the markings, just to make it harder for the enemy to work out what was going on. Then again, that in itself is an indicator of some sort of secret squirrel goings on. So I don't know if the in-country Vietnam suppressed Swedish Ks had the markings removed. This one does. We then want to fold the buttstock, which also shows you how the buttstock works if you don't know. There's at least one photo of a guy with a suppressed Swedish K firing it up to the eye but not into the shoulder with the butt folded, which I'd normally say is not the way to do it, but those guys knew what they were doing, that's for sure. We then press in the end cap, rotate our reinforced, we press in the centre, which allows us to remove the end cap. A shorter spring than you'll find in the conventional Swedish K. The bolt itself has not been lightened like the suppressed Sten bolt was lightened, but the spring has been reduced, reducing the spring pressure, which is telling you something about the balance of pressure, recoil forces, etc. That's the only change that I'm aware of, apart from all this up here, of course. We can then, so this has the British Sten style modification safety bolt, or safety feature for the bolt, where you push the cocking handle into a hole in the receiver and it can't then bounce back and accidentally fire around, which is a risk with an unlocked blowback weapon like this. So we have to pop that out, pull the bolt to the rear, overcome the sear, and out pops the breech block. So completely standard, but because I've reminded myself, I'm going to point it out. There's another, very fresh looking. It hasn't patinated like the ground off marks on the outside of this gun. I think that in itself is indicative of at least a lot of handling and probably quite a lot of use after its markings were removed. But the marking on the bolt remains bright metal. Completely standard Swedish K bolt. You can pop the cocking handle out, but we won't bother. And of course, what we're most interested in is up here. So we will start that off. This one is actually overcoming the little detent ratchet thing, but I'll give it an assist because we don't want to put any extra wear on it. And then the whole thing screws off, just like the barrel unit on the normal Swedish K. There's your suppressor, very hefty suppressor, I might add. Very thick gauge steel. And then you have it's essentially a very thick, strong casing around, well, the front part anyway. It's almost like a double wall. And then with those cooling holes drilled. Knurled end cap there for removal. We have tried to remove that to show you the innards. It is stuck fast. But you can actually see the wire mesh baffling in the muzzle of the suppressor and a series of ports in the back there, which the significance of which it's essentially to do with the integral suppression, but they allow the high pressure gas being bled off via the barrel to go into the suppressor around the barrel. That will make more sense in just a moment, I promise. Now, where the magic happens on this one, well, largely in here, but when we pop the barrel out, so this is completely standard Swedish K. Look how short that barrel is. And then we have this piece, this collar. And there's also been a spacer manufactured. Now that was made by us because this was not sitting correctly as it came to us. So this has been put on there to make sure everything squares up properly. Something wasn't quite right with this one. That bit is not original. Everything else is. And you can see these ports. Normally a ported barrel would be a series of holes, like rows of holes down the barrel, like it is in the Vietnam version I'm talking about. But this has 1, 2, 3, 4, only 4 ports, and they're all in line with the bore facing forward. So that obviously the cartridge is going in there, it's firing, bullet's going that way, and immediately pressure is dropping behind the bullet as the gas is forced out of these 4 holes. Forwards. Forwards into that series of holes in the back of the suppressor. So a load of gas coming down the middle from the bore, from the muzzle I should say, and then a load more gas from the porting going down the side into the suppressor that way. Just a different way of doing it, but an interesting one. Just for a quick comparison, I've popped the barrel off our normal M45 and you can see right away it's not half the length. I mean, overall, including the chamber, it's sort of 2/3, but still substantially shorter than the full-size barrel. And it's a full-size or nearly full-size barrel in the Vietnam suppressed Swedish K. So, as I say, pretty different. So, the question is, if this isn't the version that the CIA issued en masse, not that there were a huge amount, but there were significant numbers were converted from Swedish Ks and sent to Vietnam. If it's not the standard version, what is it? Well, that is clearly finished in the classic Swedish baked on green paint, and it's a perfect match for the rest of the gun, same kind of wear and dirt and everything else on it. So this has been on the gun from the beginning. It's clearly a more sophisticated design than the HEL hastily designed and manufactured version because they needed it soon as. That was designed in late '63, knowing that Vietnam was getting serious at that point. Is this could go either way. This is either the forerunner of that, acquired by the CIA and used as the sort of template, but simplified and cheapened. So you'll see the suppressors on the versions in country are just black finished, normal, probably phosphate finish. They don't look like this, either in form or in paint color. So this could date from pre-63, and there was a little known Carl Gustav State factory designed for a suppressed Carl Gustav. That kind of appeals to me more than the other option, which is that this is after the CIA have already created a suppressed Carl Gustav and the Swedish have created their own better version, possibly for special operations forces or something like that. Now, what's suggestive of the first option is that we received this, or the Pattern Room, Ministry of Defence Pattern Room, whose collection we received in 2005, received this gun in 1970, right in the middle of the Vietnam conflict still going on. So there isn't a huge amount of time for the Swedish to... There is time, it's still possible, but I think there's a reasonable chance that this was in fact the original suppressed Swedish K. That leads to the possibility, and we're building speculation on speculation here, so we need to be careful, but that some of these did end up in Vietnam and or in other interesting places, because this one has had its markings ground off. And it came to the Pattern Room from the CIA. So it's rare that we know things like that about things that have entered the collection, but it did. So, and it was in the Pattern Room collection by 1970, having come direct from them, having seen a reasonable service life by the look of it. So what did it get up to? and I don't think we are ever going to know the answer, but it's fascinating to speculate. And this is, it's not unique. There are two others known that I know of. I'm sure there are others elsewhere, presumably in Sweden, although they haven't been identified in publications as far as I know. So there's one at Shrivenham, the weapons collection there, and there's one at the Imperial War Museum, and we have one. And the one at Shrivenham came from the same source as ours did. So pretty unusual, bit of a unicorn gun, and it's a sort of even more exciting version of the already pretty interesting CIA suppressed Swedish K. Thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. As always, check out our website, our social media channels, and especially if you'd like to see these videos without adverts and a whole load of other content from other historic firearms creators, do check out History of Weapons and War. It's an app that you can pay a monthly fee for, and you'll see a load of cool channels there. The full version of some content and without any ads as well. So do check that out. We'll continue to be free here with the ads. Also, developments, we have some extra merchandise in the shop. This rather beautiful pin here that I'm sporting, is taken from our Baby Browning, our Art Deco Baby Browning that was in our Reloaded exhibition, and we hope to get back on display at some point soon as well. One of our star exhibits, and just a really nice thing, hence I'm wearing it. Key rings as well, there's a golden AK, and possibly more coming that I'm not aware of. But check out our shop in general, and we might even put a link to this in the video. But whatever you do, come back and see us again next week.